The message arrived on a Tuesday. It came not by radio waves or light signals, but through a tear in space itself. The technicians at the Global Space Communications Center in Geneva stared at their screens in shock as the alien vessel emerged, from what they would later learn was called a fold in spacetime. "Unknown vessel approaching Earth orbit," said Peter Clark, the night shift supervisor. His voice was steady despite his racing heart. "All stations, this is not a drill. The Mawa ship was beautiful in a strange way. It had no straight lines. Instead, it curved like a living thing, its silver-blue hull reflecting sunlight as it settled into a high orbit around Earth. It was neither threatening nor particularly large, about the size of an old aircraft carrier. Within an hour, military vessels from 6 nations surrounded the alien ship at a safe distance. Fighter pilots reported no weapons pointed at Earth, no signs of hostility. "They're broadcasting something," said Linda Martinez, the communications specialist. She adjusted her headset. It's in English." The alien voice that filled the control room was melodic but clearly artificial, a translation system at work. "People of Earth, we are the Viridian Alliance. We come in peace and urgent need. We request immediate audience with your leaders." That was how it began, not with an invasion or a show of force, but with a plea. 3 days later, in a secure conference room 30 floors beneath the United Nations building in New York, Commander Eric Hansen watched as the first aliens humanity had ever met entered the room. They were tall and slender, with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Ambassador Zayla was their leader, standing nearly 7 feet tall with large expressive eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Thank you for receiving us," Zayla said, bowing slightly. The translator device at her neck converted her musical language into clear English. "We have traveled far to find you." President Sofia Garcia nodded. "We are honored by first contact, Ambassador. But your message mentioned urgent need. What brings you to Earth?" Zyla's skin darkened to a deep blue. "War, President Garcia. A war we are losing." Commander Hansen leaned forward slightly. As the military advisor to this historic meeting, he had expected many things: requests for resources, technology exchange, cultural sharing. Not this. Zyla activated a device on her wrist. A 3-dimensional map filled the center of the room, showing hundreds of star systems. Nearly a third glowed red. "This is the known galaxy," she explained. "The red systems have fallen to the Dracon Empire in the last 50 years. We are the Viridian Alliance." Several dozen blue points lit up. "And we have been fighting a defensive war for generations." "And Earth?" General Olivia Scott asked. "Where are we in this map?" Zyla pointed to a small, unremarkable section, at the edge. "You are here in what we call the spiral arm periphery. Your star is young, your civilization younger. The Dracons have not yet turned their attention to your sector." "Yet," said Hansen. "But they will." "Yes." Zyla's voice was grave. "It is only a matter of time." President Garcia studied the map. "Why come to us? Surely there are other, more advanced civilizations in your alliance." Ambassador Zyla's 4 hands made a complicated gesture that her companions seemed to understand. One of them, introduced as Science Director Ven, stepped forward. "We have observed your broadcasts for decades," Ven said. "We have studied your history, your cultures, your wars." His eyes, 4 of them, arranged in a diamond pattern, blinked in sequence. "Your species is unique in our experience." Hansen felt a chill. "In what way?" "You fight differently," said Zyla. "The Dracons conquer through overwhelming force and numbers. We of the Alliance have always fought defensively, protecting our worlds, our people. But you humans..." She paused, searching for words. "You have fought thousands of wars against yourselves," Ven continued. "You have developed strategies, tactics, and thinking that no other species we know has ever conceived. You fight to win, not just to survive." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They hadn't come to warn humanity. They had come to recruit them. What exactly are you asking of Earth? President Garcia finally asked. Shayla's skin shifted to a pale green. We offer knowledge, technology centuries beyond your current capabilities, medical advances that could eliminate most human disease, clean energy that would end your dependence on fossil fuels, faster than light travel. In exchange for what? Hansen asked, though he already knew the answer. Strategic advisors, said Zyla. Military thinkers. We need humans who understand warfare in ways we never have. General Scott laughed softly. You traveled across the galaxy to hire military consultants? You misunderstand, Ven said. We do not expect you to fight our war. We need your minds, not your bodies. A few dozen advisors could change the tide of this conflict. Hansen looked at the map again, at the red systems that had already fallen. He thought about the billions of lives that must represent. These Drakens, he said. Tell us about them. Scylla touched her wrist device again. The map disappeared, replaced by an image that made several people in the room gasp. The creature was massive, heavily armored, with a face that seemed to be mostly teeth and eyes. The Drakens evolved from apex predators, Zayla explained. They conquered their own world before reaching the stars. They see all other life as either potential slaves or food. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. How many worlds have they taken? Asked President Garcia. 17 major worlds, said Ven. Dozens of colonies. We estimate over 12 billion sentient beings now live under Drakon rule. Hansen felt something cold settle in his stomach. Not just at the numbers, but at what they weren't saying. And what happens to the people on conquered worlds? He asked. Shayla's skin went almost black. Those who resist are killed. The rest are enslaved or used as sustenance. The room erupted in murmurs. President Garcia raised a hand for silence. Ambassador, we will need time to discuss this among ourselves. This is not a decision I can make alone. We understand, said Zyla. But please, do not take too long. Every day, another world faces the Drakon fleet. As the aliens were escorted from the room, Hansen remained seated, staring at the now empty space where the map had been. Lieutenant Samantha West, his aide, leaned closer. Sir? What are you thinking? Hansen looked at her. I'm thinking they have no idea what they're asking for. They want advisors, West, consultants. And that's bad. It's insufficient, he said quietly. If these Drakons are what the ambassador described, humanity won't just offer advice. What will we do, sir? Hansen stood, straightening his uniform. If Earth agrees to help, we'll do what humans have always done when faced with a threat like this. We'll fight. Not with a few advisors, but with everything we have. They're asking for help, West said, understanding dawning on her face. Yes, Hansen nodded. And if history is any guide, they're going to get much more than they bargained for. 1 month after the Viridian visit to Earth, Captain Diana Miller stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery, the first human ship equipped with Viridian full-drive technology. The stars outside were unfamiliar. They were 17 light-years from Earth in what would have taken decades to reach without alien help. Status report, she said, her eyes fixed on the main view screen. All systems normal, Captain, said Alan Grant, her communications specialist. The Viridian escort vessels are asking if we're ready to proceed to the observation post. Diana nodded. The ship still felt strange to her. The Viridians had helped retrofit the Discovery with their technology in just 3 weeks. What would have taken humans years to develop, they had simply given away. That alone told her how desperate they were. Tell them we're ready, and make sure our data recorders are running. I want every bit of information we can gather. The small fleet of ships moved deeper into Viridian space. Diana had been surprised when Earth had agreed to send a team to gather intelligence on the Drakon Empire. Even more surprised when she was selected to lead it. But Commander Hansen had been clear. We need to understand the enemy before we decide how to fight them. Dr. Olivia Patterson, the team's xenobiologist, joined Diana on the bridge, The Viridians say we're approaching a system that was recently attacked by the Drakons. They want us to see the aftermath. Diana felt a tightness in her chest. This is what we came for. The planet that appeared on their screens looked wounded. Parts of its surface glowed with fires that were visible even from orbit. The once blue oceans were clouded with ash and debris. Life signs? Diana asked. Alan checked his instruments. Very few, Captain. Concentrated in underground shelters. The Viridians say about 12% of the population survived. This was a colony world called Taros, Dr. Patterson said, reading from her datapad. Population was around 9 million. They were farmers mostly. No strategic value except as a food source. Diana clenched her jaw. And the Drakons did this. Why? Because it was there, said a voice from the door. A Viridian officer named Kelv had joined them. His skin was a dull gray, a sign of mourning in his species. The Drakons do not need reasons, Captain Miller. Conquest is their purpose. It is built into their very biology. Later that day in the ship's conference room, Diana's team reviewed what they had learned. The walls displayed images and data collected from the ruined planet and from Viridian military archives. The Drakons are a hive mind species, Dr. Patterson explained, pointing to diagrams of the alien physiology. Not like Earth insects, but something similar. They have individual thoughts, but share a collective consciousness. It makes them incredibly coordinated in battle, and incredibly predictable, added Lieutenant Steve Rogers, the team's tactical analyst. Look at these battle records. The Drakons always use the same approach. Overwhelming force, direct assault, no subtlety. And it works, Diana pointed out. They've conquered 17 major worlds, because the Viridians always fight the same way too, Steve said. They set up defensive lines and try to hold ground. When that fails, they retreat and try again. Alan Grant, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. They've been fighting defensively for so long they've forgotten how to attack. Diana nodded slowly. Or they never knew in the first place. The next 3 weeks were spent visiting Viridian military bases, reviewing their battle tactics, and studying Drakon movements. Diana's team worked 18-hour days, sending encrypted reports back to Earth. The more they learned, the clearer the picture became. It's like watching someone play chess who only moves their pawns, Steve said during one briefing. The Viridians have all these pieces, but they only use them one way. And the Drakons? Diana asked. They're playing with twice as many pieces, but they're just as limited in their thinking. They win through brute force, not strategy. Diana looked at the star map showing Drakon territory. What would happen if someone played differently, Backy? On Earth, Admiral William Collins presented the findings to the United Earth government. The meeting took place in a secure underground chamber, with representatives from all major Earth nations present. Captain Miller's reports confirm what the Viridians told us, Admiral Collins said. The Drakon Empire is expanding rapidly, conquering world after world. At their current rate, they'll reach our sector within 15 years. And the Viridians can't stop them? Asked one representative. They've been trying for generations without success. Their entire approach to warfare is defensive. They slow the Drakons down, but can't push them back. President Garcia leaned forward. What are our options, Admiral? We can do what the Viridians asked. Send advisors to help them improve their defensive strategy. It might buy them time, maybe even stabilize the front. Or, the President prompted. Admiral Collins took a deep breath. Or we can do what humans have always done when faced with an existential threat. We fight. Not just with advisors, but with ships, soldiers, and a strategy the Drakons have never seen before. You're suggesting we go to war? Another representative asked, her voice rising in disbelief. Against an alien empire we barely understand? I'm suggesting we have a choice, Collins replied. Wait 15 years for the Drakons to reach us or take the fight to them now, with Viridian technology and resources behind us. The debate lasted for hours. Arguments about risk, about humanity's place in the galaxy, about whether this was even Earth's fight. But as the discussion continued, a sense of resolution filled the room. We've seen what happens to worlds under Drakon rule, President Garcia said finally. We've seen what awaits us if we do nothing. I believe we must act. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. For the first time in human history, Earth declared war on an alien power. When Ambassador Zyla was informed of the decision, she seemed confused. "We asked for advisors," she said to Admiral Collins. "Not for your species to join our war directly." "We don't work that way," Collins told her. "Humanity doesn't send others to fight our battles. If this threat is real, and we believe it is, then it's our fight too." "But your world is not under attack," Zayla said, her skin shifting to a puzzled yellow. "Not yet," Collins replied. "But we've learned something in our long history of warfare, Ambassador. The best defense isn't a wall or a shield. It's stopping your enemy before they reach your home." "You would risk your people for ours?" she asked, still not understanding. Collins looked her directly in the eyes. "We would risk our people to stop the Drakons, because if we don't, eventually they'll come for Earth too. And by then, there might be no one left to stand with us." Zayla's skin changed to a deep blue, a color Collins had not seen before. "Then I must inform the High Council. They need to understand what's coming." "What's coming?" Collins asked. "Humans," she said simply. "And it seems we have no idea what that truly means." The Viridian High Council chamber fell silent as Fleet Commander Natalie Rodriguez entered. She was shorter than the Viridians by at least 2 feet, but she walked with such confidence that many council members leaned away slightly as she passed. The humans had arrived 3 days ago with a fleet of 20 warships. 20 ships against the thousands in the Draken Armada seemed like nothing, but the Viridians had learned not to underestimate these newcomers. "Thank you for meeting with me," Natalie said, her voice clear in the large chamber. "I understand you have questions about our battle plans." Supreme Counselor Thren, his skin a worried purple, nodded. "Indeed, Commander. We expected your ships to join our defensive line at the Calamar system. Instead, your vessels have been requesting detailed maps of Dracon's supply routes and command centers. May I ask why?" Natalie activated a small device, and a holographic map appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the current front lines of the war, a curved boundary with Viridian space on one side and Draken-controlled territory on the other. "This is how you've been fighting," she said. "A defensive line stretched across hundreds of light years. The Drakons push, you resist, they find a weak point, break through, and you fall back to form a new line." Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Thren's skin darkened further. "This is the nature of war, Commander. What would you suggest instead?" Natalie touched the device again. The map changed, showing dozens of red dots scattered throughout. Drakon territory. These are Drakon shipyards, fuel refineries, command centers, and clone facilities, the heart of their war machine. She looked up at the council. "While you defend your borders, we're going to attack these targets." "Behind enemy lines?" Counselor Zavi asked, her voice rising. "But the Drakons would crush such a small force." "Not if they can't catch us," Natalie replied. "Your fold drive technology lets us appear where they don't expect us, strike hard, and disappear before they can respond." "But this is not how war is conducted," Thren protested. "There are no battle lines, no territories being claimed or defended." Natalie smiled slightly. "That's exactly the point, Counselor. We're not fighting for territory. We're fighting to cripple their ability to make war." As the Viridian Council debated this strange approach, the human fleet vanished from orbit. Using the fold drive technology the Viridians had shared, the 20 Earthships jumped deep into Draken space. Their first target, the massive shipyards orbiting the Drakon world of Krell. On the bridge of the UES Vanguard, Natalie watched the enemy shipyard grow larger on the view screen. The Drakons had no idea they were coming. Why would they? No enemy had ever struck this far behind their lines. "All ships, battle formation," she ordered. "Remember, we hit hard and fast. Target their construction bays and fuel reserves. We leave in exactly 15 minutes, no matter what." "They're detecting us now," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Carl Wilson. "Drakon defense ships are moving to intercept." Too late, Natalie said. Launch missiles. All batteries fire. The human fleet unleashed a barrage that lit up space. Missiles and energy beams struck the unshielded shipyard. The Drakons had never needed strong defenses this deep in their territory. Explosions bloomed silently in the vacuum, tearing apart half-built warships and fuel tanks. Drakon defenders are launching, Carl reported. 5 minutes until they're in range. Continue the attack, Natalie ordered. Begin moving toward extraction point. For 10 more minutes, the human fleet poured destruction onto the shipyard. Then, just as the first Drakon ships came within firing range, Natalie gave the order. All ships execute full jump now. The human fleet vanished, leaving behind a crippled shipyard and confused Drakon commanders. 3 days later, as the Viridian Council was still discussing the humans' strange tactics, reports flooded in. Human ships had struck a fuel processing center in the Vega sector. A communication hub in the Orion Arm had gone dark. A Drakon clone facility on Tor Prime was in ruins. 20 ships, Councilor Zavi said in wonder as the reports continued. Just 20 ships, and they've done more damage in a week than our fleet has in a year. On the ground, the human approach was just as surprising. Colonel Jason Pearson led a small force of 300 Marines, transported by Viridian allies to the occupied world of Nellis. The local Viridian resistance expected the humans to help defend key civilian centers against Drakon patrols. Instead, Jason gathered his officers in an abandoned building near the Drakon's main base. We're not here to play defense, he told his team. Tonight, we hit their command center. Lieutenant Greg Powell looked at the holographic map in disbelief. Sir, that's the most heavily guarded building on the planet. The Viridians have never even attempted to attack it. Exactly why it's vulnerable, Jason replied. They're not expecting anyone to be crazy enough to try. He pointed to different sections of the base. Team Alpha will create a diversion here. Team Bravo will cut power here. My team will enter through their waste disposal system. Their sewers, sir? Greg asked, his face showing clear disgust. The one place they won't be watching, Jason said with a smile. We go in at midnight. The attack unfolded exactly as Jason had planned. The diversionary explosion drew most of the Drakon forces to the east gate. The power cut threw their systems into confusion. And through it all, Jason led his team through the foul-smelling tunnels beneath the base. They emerged inside the command center itself. The Drakons, massive reptilian creatures in heavy armor, were completely unprepared for enemies appearing within their most secure facility. The battle was brief and decisive. Plant the charges, Jason ordered once they had control. We have 10 minutes to clear the area. His team set explosive devices throughout the command center, focusing on communication equipment and data cores. Then they retreated the same way they had come. The Drakon commander captured during the raid watched in confusion as Jason prepared to leave. You won't hold this position, the Drakon said in its harsh, translated voice. Our reinforcements will reclaim this facility within hours. We don't want to hold it, Jason replied, checking his timer. We just want to destroy it. From a safe distance, Jason and his team watched as the Drakon command center erupted in flames. The local Viridian resistance fighters stared in amazement. You're leaving? Asked their leader, a Viridian named Krell. But you've created an opening. We could push the Drakons back from this entire region. That's not our mission, Jason explained. We hit them where it hurts, then move to the next target. By this time tomorrow, we'll be attacking their supply depot in the next system. Krell's skin shifted to a confused yellow. I don't understand. You hold no territory. You establish no defensive positions. How do you expect to win a war this way? One of Jason's soldiers, Sergeant Lucy Baker, laughed softly. That's just it, she said. You've been fighting to not lose, holding ground, defending positions. We're fighting to win. And how do you win without holding ground? Krell asked. Jason checked his weapon as their extraction ship approached. By making sure the enemy can no longer fight. Every command center we destroy, every supply line we cut, every factory we bomb, that's how many fewer Drakons will be attacking your worlds next month. As the humans prepared to leave, A young Viridian approached Jason. "Take me with you," he said. "I want to fight like you do." Jason looked at the alien, seeing the determination in his color-shifting skin. "It's not your way," he said gently. "Maybe it's time we learned new ways," the young Viridian replied. Jason nodded slowly. "Maybe it is." 6 months into the war, the UES Mercy drifted in orbit around the Viridian homeworld. The hospital ship was twice the size of any other human vessel, painted white with large red crosses visible from any angle in space. Inside, the halls were filled with the wounded, both human and alien. Chief Medical Officer Lisa Reyes moved quickly between beds, checking monitors and speaking softly to her patients. She had not slept more than 4 hours at a stretch since the war began. The BO latest battle had been particularly brutal, with 3 human ships lost and hundreds of casualties. "Doctor, the Viridian in bed 12 is asking for you," said a nurse, touching Lisa's arm gently. Lisa nodded and made her way to the bed where a young Viridian soldier lay. His skin, normally a vibrant blue, had faded to a pale gray. One of his forearms was missing below the elbow, carefully bandaged. "You wanted to see me?" Lisa asked, checking his chart. "Yes, doctor," the Viridian said weakly. "I wanted to thank you. My kind and yours. We were strangers 6 months ago, yet you treat us with the same care as your own people." Lisa smiled, tiredly. "That's what we do. Care doesn't recognize species." The Viridian's skin flickered briefly with blue, a sign of emotion. The Dracons would never understand this. They see weakness in compassion. "Then they understand nothing about strength," Lisa replied, adjusting his medication. "Rest now, you'll be back with your unit soon." Later that day, in a different part of the ship, Engineer Frank Powell stood in a large workshop surrounded by pieces of alien technology. He had been working for weeks with a team of Viridian scientists, combining human weapon designs with alien power sources. "Try it now," he said to his assistant, stepping back from the prototype weapon on the bench. The assistant activated the device. A beam of energy shot across the room, leaving a perfectly round hole in the test target. "Perfect," Frank said, grinning. "Portable, powerful, and it can cut through Dracon armor like butter." Then, the Viridian science director who had first come to Earth, examined the weapon with all 4 of his hands. "Remarkable. We have had this energy technology for centuries, but never thought to apply it this way." Frank began disassembling the prototype. "That's the human touch. We see a rock, we immediately think about how to throw it at something." "You say this as if it is a flaw," Venn noted, his skin shifting to a curious yellow. "Sometimes it is," Frank admitted. "But right now it's exactly what the galaxy needs." Meanwhile, on the colony world Terrace 4, a different kind of battle was unfolding. Major Susan Carter crouched behind a collapsed wall, her rifle at the ready. Her Marines were scattered throughout the ruined city, protecting thousands of Viridian civilians as they evacuated. The Dracons had launched a massive counterattack against this world, hoping to break the new human-Viridian alliance by targeting civilian populations. Susan's unit had been dropped in to hold off the Dracon forces while the civilians escaped. "Status report," she said into her comm unit. "East sector secure, but we're taking heavy fire on the North Road," came the reply from Sergeant Ben Kelly. "The evacuation ships are loading as fast as they can, but we need at least 30 more minutes." Susan checked her tactical display. The Dracons were pushing hard from the north and her people were running low on ammunition. "Tell the evacuation teams to move faster. We'll hold as long as we can." She moved to a new position, spotting a group of Draken soldiers advancing toward a building where Viridian children were being sheltered. Susan aimed and fired 3 quick shots, dropping the lead Draken. The others scattered for cover. "Carter to all units," she said. "Priority is protecting the children's shelter on Maple Street. I need reinforcements here now." 2 Marines appeared at her side a moment later, breathing hard from running. "Orders, Major?" one asked. "We hold this position at all costs," Susan said firmly. "Those kids get out alive." For the next hour, they fought a brutal battle in the streets. The Drakons pressed forward relentlessly, caring nothing for their own casualties. Susan's Marines fought with equal determination, giving ground only when necessary to maintain their defensive perimeter around the evacuation zone. Susan was reloading when a call came through from the evacuation ships. Major Carter, this is Transport Leader. We've loaded all civilians. Final transport departing in 5 minutes. Acknowledged, Susan replied. Begin withdrawal, all units. Fall back to extraction point in sequence. Her Marines began to pull back, covering each other's retreat. Susan stayed at her position, providing covering fire. A young Viridian girl had become separated from the others and was hiding beneath debris nearby. Susan couldn't leave her. Come on, Susan called to the girl, extending her hand. We need to go now. The girl hesitated, her skin flickering with fear. It's okay, Susan said more gently. I'll keep you safe. The girl finally darted forward, taking Susan's hand. They ran together toward the extraction point, Drakenfire following them all the way. Just as they reached the final transport, a Draken energy blast hit Susan in the back. She stumbled but managed to push the girl into the ship before collapsing. 2 Marines pulled Susan aboard as the doors closed. The ship lifted off, narrowly escaping the advancing Draken forces. In the medical bay, as a medic worked to save her life, Susan drifted in and out of consciousness. She became aware of small hands holding hers, the Viridian girl she had rescued. Why? The girl asked simply. Why would you risk your life for me? Susan couldn't answer, but nearby, Commander, Paul Warren spoke up. He had lost half his squadron protecting the refugee ships. Because that's who we are, he said. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. The girl's skin shifted to a deep blue, the Viridian color of profound emotion. My people thought humans came to fight because you enjoy war. Paul looked out the viewport at the planet growing smaller below them. We don't enjoy it, but we understand its cost better than most. And we know that sometimes you have to be willing to pay that cost to stop something worse. Later, as the fleet regrouped, Admiral Martinez received reports from across the front. The Drakons had launched similar attacks on 3 other worlds, but in each case human and Viridian forces had evacuated the civilians with minimal losses. They're getting desperate, his tactical officer noted, targeting civilians instead of military targets. It means we're winning, Martinez replied. They can't match us ship for ship anymore, so they're trying to break our alliance. Will it work? Asked the officer. Martinez looked at the data streaming in from across the galaxy, reports of human soldiers fighting alongside Viridians, of wounded being treated together on hospital ships, of engineers sharing technology and knowledge. No, he said firmly. If anything, they've just made our alliance stronger. On the Viridian homeworld, the High Council met to discuss the latest developments. For the first time in generations, the star map showed Draken forces in retreat on multiple fronts. The humans fight like nothing we have ever seen, Counselor Zavi said. They do not follow any conventional strategy or doctrine, and yet they are winning. Supreme Counselor Thren replied, his skin a thoughtful blue. Perhaps we have been fighting wrong all these years. Not wrong, Ambassador Zayla said quietly. Just incompletely. We fought to survive. Humans fight to win. There is a difference. 1 year after Earth declared war on the Draken Empire, Admiral John Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, looking at the massive fleet gathered around him. Over 200 human ships had joined the fight, alongside thousands of Viridian vessels. They orbited the gas giant Krell, just 1 system away from the Drakon homeworld. All ships report ready, Admiral, said Lieutenant Nicole Robinson, her fingers moving quickly over her console. The Viridian fleet is in position as well. John nodded, his face serious. The past year had changed everything. What began as a small human force using hit-and-run tactics had grown into the largest coordinated military operation in the galaxy's history. The Drakons had been pushed back on every front, their supply lines cut, their shipyards destroyed, their clone facilities bombed. Now, for the first time since the war began, the Drakon leadership had sent a message requesting talks. Put the Drakon transmission on screen, John ordered. The view screen flickered to life, showing a massive Draken in ornate armor. Supreme War Leader Vex was the highest authority in their empire, rarely seen by outsiders. Human Admiral, the Dracon's harsh voice filled the bridge. You have fought, and impressively. We offer terms to end this conflict. John kept his face neutral. We're listening. We will retreat to our homeworld and the surrounding system. We will cease all expansion for 50 years. In return, you will withdraw your forces from Dracon space immediately. John glanced at Lieutenant Robinson, who shook her head slightly. Their intelligence confirmed what they suspected. The Dracon shipyards on their homeworld were working day and night to rebuild their fleet. War Leader Vex, John replied carefully. Your offer is noted. However, our terms remain unchanged. Unconditional surrender of all Dracon forces and a complete disarmament of your military capacity. The Dracon's face contorted in what might have been rage. Impossible. The Draken Empire has existed for 10,000 years. We do not surrender. We do not disarm. Then we have nothing more to discuss, John said simply. After the transmission ended, Ambassador Zayla approached John. Her skin was a troubled shade of purple. Admiral, the Drakons have offered peace. Many on the Viridian Council believe we should accept their terms. It's not peace they're offering, John replied. It's a pause. They'll use those 50 years to rebuild, to study our tactics, to prepare for the next war, and next time, they won't underestimate us. Zayla's skin shifted to a thoughtful blue. You believe they cannot change their nature? I believe evidence over promises, John said. Every world they've conquered, every species they've enslaved or destroyed, that's the evidence of who they are. He turned to face her fully. Can you guarantee they won't resume their conquest once we withdraw? After a long moment, Zayla's skin darkened. No, she admitted. I cannot. Then we finish this, once and for all. The final battle began at dawn, Earth time. The combined human Viridian fleet executed a maneuver that the Viridian commanders had initially deemed impossible, splitting into 3 groups and attacking from multiple vectors simultaneously, folding in and out of space in a pattern that confused and overwhelmed Draken defenses. On the bridge of the Defender, John watched as the first wave broke through the outer defense grid. Draken command ships are changing position, Nicole reported. They're trying to regroup at these coordinates. She highlighted a section of space on the tactical display. Exactly as we predicted, John said. Signal the Viridian heavy cruisers. Execute Phase 2. The Viridian ships following human battle plans appeared behind the regrouping Dracon vessels, catching them in a deadly crossfire. Explosions bloomed silently in the blackness of space. Hour after hour, the battle raged across the Dracon home system. The Drakons fought with desperate fury, but for the first time in their history they faced an enemy that could anticipate their moves and counter them before they happened. Admiral, Nicole called out, her voice tense. Draken reinforcements, arriving from the far side of the planet. John studied the tactical display. That's their reserve fleet, more ships than we expected. He considered for only a moment. Order our stealth bombers to launch. Target those shipyards on the moon. Now. This had been the contingency plan all along. If the Drakons committed their reserves, it would leave their shipyards vulnerable. Within minutes, 20 small human ships, nearly invisible to sensors, streaked toward the Draken moon. The explosion was visible even from orbit around the gas giant. The shipyards where the Drakons had been building their new armada disappeared in a blinding flash. Direct hit, Nicole confirmed. Shipyards destroyed. On the main view screen they could see the effect on the Drakon fleet. Ships began to slow, to hesitate. For a species with a hive mind consciousness, the psychological impact was devastating. Their future, their ability to rebuild, had just been erased before their eyes. 3 hours later, a new transmission came from the Dracon homeworld. This time it wasn't War Leader Vex, but the Draken Council of Elders. The lead elder began, then seemed to struggle with the words. We surrender. Unconditionally. In the aftermath, as human and Viridian ships secured the Draken system and began the enormous task of dismantling their war machine, John stood with Zayla in the observation lounge of the Defender. Below them, the Dracon homeworld turned slowly, still beautiful despite the scars of battle visible on its surface. "What happens to them now?" Zayla asked softly. "They'll be confined to their homeworld," John explained. "All their warships dismantled, their clone facilities shut down. We'll establish a permanent observation post to ensure they don't rebuild their military. And the worlds they conquered. Freed," John said simply. "Every species they enslaved will be liberated and helped to rebuild." Zyla's skin shifted through several colors before settling on a deep, reverent blue. "When we first came to Earth, we thought we were approaching a primitive species. We only wanted advisors, strategies. We never imagined total war," John finished for her. "It's something humans learned through our own bloody history. When faced with an enemy that threatens your existence, half measures only prolong the suffering." Later that week, Ambassador Zayla addressed the United Earth government via subspace communication. Representatives from a dozen formerly enslaved species stood behind her. "People of Earth," she began, her translator conveying the emotion in her voice. "We asked for help and you responded with total war. We didn't understand then what we know now, that humanity's greatest strength isn't your capacity for violence, but your unwillingness to allow injustice to continue when you have the power to stop it." She paused, her skin glowing with a blue, so deep it was almost luminous. "The galaxy will never forget what humanity has done. You came as strangers to a war that wasn't yours, and you fought as if everything was at stake. Because for you, it was. Not your homes or your families, but something more fundamental. Your belief that freedom and safety are rights that belong to all thinking beings." In the audience, Commander Ryan Foster listened quietly. He had fought from the first day to the last, losing friends and colleagues along the way. A Viridian child sat beside him, the daughter of a soldier who had died saving a human ship. She was going to live with Ryan's family on Earth now, part of a new exchange program between their worlds. "They called for help," the girl said softly, watching Zyla's speech. "And you came." Ryan nodded, putting his arm around her small shoulders. "That's what humans do." As Zayla concluded her speech, ships all across the galaxy, human, Viridian, and vessels from all the liberated worlds, sent the same message toward Earth. It was simple, just 3 words repeated in thousands of languages. "Thank you, humanity." And from Earth, the reply was equally simple. "You're welcome. We stand together." In the vastness of space, where the Draken Empire had once spread fear and destruction, a new alliance was forming. Not a defensive pact or a temporary coalition, but something stronger, a shared understanding that some things were worth fighting for no matter the cost. The war was over. Peace had been won, and the galaxy would never be the same again.